Good afternoon, subscribers. Just to finish off my previous video with regard to production possibility curves, opportunity costs, and all that jazz, let's get that finished with the following three diagrams. So, we're aware of what the PPC is, the production possibility curve, showing the maximum level of output that we can get if we use our resources to their absolute optimum or efficiency. Just by way of information, ladies and gentlemen, we can refer to those factors of production as a nation's factor endowments. So if a country has got lots of capital, enterprise, land and labour, then you could say that they had a very significant amount of factor endowments. And that, of course, determines whether the PPC lies here, or here, or here. It determines the position of it. So very important to remember, another way of expressing where the PPC lies, you can say, well, it is dependent upon the factor endowments of a country, because that's just the same as saying it depends upon the capital, the enterprise, the land and the labour. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to the diagrams. So, here we have PPC1. If it were the case that we had more of X being produced for one reason or another, and we'll come back to those reasons in a moment, then what you'll find will happen is that there will be this pivot in the PPC curve. So it will pivot around this point Y1. So we're not actually able to produce more of good Y, whatever good Y may be, but it might be the case that we come across and develop and research into new methods of production for good X. And so consequently, the economy in question becomes better at producing good X, and therefore we get this pivot whereby the PPC pivots outwards to PPC2. And you can obviously see the same thing happening here, except this time we're applying that particular scenario to good Y, and so we get the pivot point around here. Now in both instances, we're still able to produce the original level of Y or X, but it's the other good which we can produce more of. So that's where you might get this pivot rather than the shift. And of course, it's the shift, of course, which we looked at in the previous video, causing economic growth. Now this can still be seen as economic growth, of course, because the PPC is moving outwards. So we could either be saying economic growth is PPC1 out to PPC2, or this notion of pivoting, the pivot point. Okay, let's move on. So we've done the pivots, we've done the shifts. Let's now consider how many units of a good have to be given up in order to produce another one. Now, you will know that opportunity cost is defined as the cost of the next best alternative foregone. So what does that mean? It means that if I wish to produce one more unit of X, how many units of Y do I have to give up? And I'm applying that here when we move from A to B. I'm saying that's 1 unit of X, 1X. And when we move from C to D, I'm saying that that's also 1 unit of X. Now the interesting thing, ladies and gentlemen, is this. When you go from A to B and produce 1 more unit of X, you only give up, the nation only gives up this amount of good Y. So that's our delta Y in effect. That's how much of good Y we're giving up. So that in effect is the opportunity cost of producing 1 more unit of X. When we move to C and D, which is simply further around the PPC curve, we have to give up, the nation has to give up that amount of X. Sorry, that amount of Y, delta Y. And so clearly, delta Y in this instance is bigger than delta Y in this instance. And so in order to get 1 additional unit of X here, it's more costly. The opportunity cost is greater because we're having to give up more units of Y. That distance is clearly bigger than that distance. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is obviously because, I'm sure the clever clods amongst you have worked that out, as we move around PPC, due to its shape, we are encountering what's known as increasing opportunity costs. Now, let's think about why that might be the case. Why might we be having to give up more and more units of y to produce one additional unit of x? Well, think of it like this. If this is a two-good economy where you can only produce y and x, and so people either are put to work producing y or producing x, as you want more x, you've got to pull people out of producing y and say to them, okay, you're an expert at producing y, but I want you to make x instead. Now, x for that particular person who specialises in good y, that's not their specialism. Therefore, they'll not be as efficient. Therefore, it's more costly, and you'll need to transport more and more workers from the production line of y to the production line of x. So that's the reason why you get this increase in opportunity cost. It's because as you transfer more and more labour across from one production line to the next production line, their efficiency is declining all the time, and so it becomes more increasingly costly. So we say in a diagram like this, as I've mentioned, this is known as increasing opportunity costs. Now, that is not the only shape of a PPC. So we generally tend to think of concave, convex, and also straight line constant PPC curves. So if you had a straight line, like so, then the opportunity cost along a straight line like that, the opportunity cost along the PPC frontier, or the production possibility curve, is constant rather than increasing opportunity costs. Or if you had a PPC curve which was shaped comme ça, PPC1, then as you move in this direction, that is decreasing opportunity costs, because you would have to give up less and less units of y to produce more units of x. Obviously, due to the concave, convex nature of these curves, you get that increasing, decreasing aspect. Okay, so that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's really all I did yesterday with my Year 12 class. So I'll leave that with you and look forward to bringing you the next in this series, which will be, I think we'll be moving on tomorrow to look at some past paper questions, and then focusing a little bit on economic systems, market, planned, mixed, and so on. Bye for now.